What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 8 top 34 running back rankings. You guys might be thinking top 34, that's kind of a weird cutoff. That is specifically due to the fact that this is bye-mageddon week. We have 6 different teams that are on bye. It's going to be slim pickings at some positions. Running back definitely could be one of those. I settled on 34. I think even before you get there, you're looking at names that you just don't want to play in your lineup. But if you're super desperate, I get it. After that, it really just completely falls off a cliff, and it's pretty much your preference on like which random handcuff backup do you think could actually get into the end zone. So let's dive right into the rankings here. Starting off in tier 1, we're not going to make it too complicated. These are the top 3 running backs in points per game. It is Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Christian McCaffrey, just kind of ranked on matchup, and like JT just giving them the edge. I mean, 3 different games with 3 total touchdowns. CMC definitely draws the toughest matchup here with the Texans, but he's obviously going to be a guaranteed lock in your lineup. Moving into tier 2, we have Josh Jacobs, who has had 3 straight games scoring at least 2 touchdowns. He is currently the running back 4 in points per game. I think you just continue to ride the hot hand there. Then at running back 5, I have Devon Achane, who is the RB5 in points per game on the season. Despite this offense being all over the place, Devon Achane just continues to produce. He's either going to have these super strong rushing games, or he's going to get very involved as a pass catcher. The offense is just holding him back, though, from his like peak upside. And this week, they have the 4th lowest implied point total. So not great there. Just too talented of a player to be sitting. Then I have James Cook going up against the Panthers. And I actually debated between him and Javonte Williams here. They're both going to be in tier 2. Both guys don't draw the best matchups. I think you look at the Panthers and you think, all right, like this might be a solid spot for running backs. It's been 3 straight weeks where they've kind of shut down like really solid fantasy running backs, at least in terms of their efficiency on the ground. Devon Achane 2 weeks ago had 10 carries for 16 yards. Then Javonte, 13 carries for 29 yards. And then most recently, Breece Hall for 38. Now, I still think James Cook is obviously a really strong running back 1 play. Did kind of fall off over the last few weeks after a really hot start to the season, but he's going to get strong usage. He's going to have a ton of touchdown upside on one of, the best offenses in the NFL. And then the other guy, Javonte Williams, also not the best matchup here against the Broncos, but he's the running back 6 in points per game. He scored at least 18 PPR points in 5 of his 7 games this season. Also, the Cowboys are underdogs, so trailing game script, potentially more passing volume through the air. Now, moving into tier 3, this is kind of an interesting mix. I certainly didn't think that coming into the season in week 8, I'd have Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley in the same tier as like Cam Scatterbo, Rashad White, DeAndre Swift. But that is just where we're at this point in the season. For Derrick Henry, this is going to be assuming that Lamar Jackson is back. I think Vegas is anticipating that. Like the Ravens have the 3rd highest implied point total. That would not be the case if it is like Cooper Rush or Snoop Huntley playing. And then the Bears have been a pretty decent matchup for opposing running backs. They're allowing the 10th most points per game to the position. The issue with Derrick Henry is that he just hasn't been great this year. He's averaging 12.2 PPR points per game. But if Lamar Jackson is back in the lineup, I do think this is the opportunity for him to pretty much start producing like you thought he would when you drafted him, like 1-2 turn area. And then the other guy, Saquon Barkley, under 9 PPR points in back-to-back games on the season. He's only averaging 13.5 points per game, and he's averaging a very low 3.3 yards per carry. So it has not been pretty here for Saquon Barkley. I still think better games are going to be ahead. It is tough to rank him like outside the top 12 running backs. Like I still think he's a fantasy running back 1, especially with this week. Like you're just going to continue to start him. That's kind of just how it goes. But you would like to see, at least like as we're getting closer to the second half, some sort of like big upside game where he's actually ripping off, the long plays you pretty much came to expect weekly in the 2024 season. Then I've got Cam Scatterbo in that same matchup against the Eagles. Since becoming the starter, he's averaging 20.2 PPR points per game. The Eagles' defense has actually been pretty rough at stopping the run, allowing the 7th most points per game to the position. We saw Cam Scatterbo have a big game against them just a couple of weeks ago in their first matchup. I think he can have another nice performance here in week 8. Then I have Rashad White going up against the Saints. This is obviously going to be me anticipating Bucky Irving missing another game. The Bucks have a week 9 bye, So it kind of just makes sense. Like Bucky hasn't practiced yet. Why are you going to force him back, rush him back pre-bye when he can just take another 2 weeks and then come back, pretty much close to 100%. So I do think they're going to continue to roll with Rachaad White. His usage has been really strong. The Bucks are implied 27 points this week, so Vegas thinks they're going to be one of the higher scoring teams. I think this is a really strong spot to play Rachaad White. Then I have Quinshon Judkins going up against the Patriots, coming off a really nice week 7, 26.4 PPR points, scored 3 touchdowns against the Dolphins. I do have some potential concerns about like the game script here against the Patriots. The Browns have the second lowest implied point total. They're 7-point underdogs in this matchup. And then the Patriots are also allowing the 6th fewest points per game to the running back position. And the issue with Quinshon Judkins is that we haven't necessarily seen him be like the most game script proof running back, where he is not getting super involved as a pass catcher. And so if they are trailing, especially early on, we could see a lot more Jerome Ford, some more Dylan Sampson. Like even in this matchup against the Dolphins, I don't believe he recorded a single reception or was even targeted a single time. So that does make the floor fairly low, but just like with how productive Judkins has been, how solid he's been on the ground, it's going to be tough to rank him outside like the high-end running back 2 area. For me, he is like a, right at the back end of the running back 1s. Then I have DeAndre Swift going up against the Ravens. He was a guy that I thought was, pretty much at risk of losing his starting spot coming out of the bye. He had been really rough to start off the season. Since that bye week, he has had back-to-back really strong games, 25.5 and 20.8 PPR points. Also on paper, this is a great matchup against the Ravens. They're allowing the second most points per game to the running back position. Now, I do think this defense is getting healthier. They're also coming out of the bye week, so, potentially will put up a better defensive stand. But I still think this is a fine spot to play DeAndre Swift. Then I've got Jaylen Warren going up against the Packers. And the Jaylen Warren experience has kind of been all over the place. You draft him thinking he's going to be in some sort of committee with Caleb Johnson. Then you see that Caleb Johnson is just a complete non-factor, but somehow he's locked into this like very strong committee with Kenneth Gainwell. Then he kind of pulls away, emerges as the workhorse. Then he gets injured. Kenneth Gainwell has a really strong game with him out. Then he comes back. They're in a very solid split once again. But then we saw in week 7, it looked like Jaylen Warren once again kind of pulled away as the workhorse. In that matchup against the Browns, he had an 80% opportunity share, was, super efficient with his opportunities, 16 carries for 127 yards on the ground, 4 receptions for 31 yards. I'm just a big fan of Jaylen Warren. I think he's a really fun player. I think he's been underrated for a few years now. So it's good to see him actually getting those opportunities. Not the greatest matchup against the Packers, but he's someone who's pretty game script proof. I like him here as a high-end running back too. And then the last guy in this tier, it's going to be Chase Brown. And I do think Joe Flacco coming in has kind of given Chase Brown some potential life this season, where he hasn't, had a massive game since Flacco came back. In the last 4, he has scored in like a very tight window between 9 and 12 PPR points, but he was really efficient on the ground in week 7, 11 carries for 108 yards. The Bengals are projected to put up points in this matchup, 24.5 implied point total. And so I do think this could be like a really solid performance out of Chase Brown. Flacco's obviously come in, raised the ceiling of this offense. We're also probably not going to be in a spot where like Chase Brown is getting, his snaps cut off by Samaje Perine due to game script. Like we saw that when they were trailing in previous games. So Chase Brown, I like him as my running back 15. Now looking at a pretty small tier 4, going to start it off with J.K. Dobbins going up against the Cowboys. Dobbins has not hit 10 PPR points in back-to-back games. A lot of that is just due to not getting into the end zone because he doesn't have like really any receiving floor to boost the production. But I do think this is a really nice matchup here against the Cowboys. They're allowing the 4th most points per game to the running back position. The Broncos are 3-point favorites. The only reason why I couldn't put Dobbins higher is that he can just have a very solid game from a real-life perspective. You can give him 18 carries, he can turn that into 90 rushing yards, and it still doesn't mean he is going to have a solid fantasy day. So that's kind of holding him back from tier 3, but still a solid like mid-tier running back 2 play. Then I have Breece Hall going up against the Bengals. The Bengals are allowing the most fantasy points per game to the running back position. The Jets actually have a somewhat decent, like 20 implied points this week. It's just tough to trust this Jets offense. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Is it Justin Fields? Is it Tyrod Taylor? I have no clue. Breece has been a little bit underwhelming. The touchdown upside has just not been there. So running back 17 for me. Then I've got Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Browns. And if you roster Ramondre, I mean, the week 7 usage was just amazing for him. He had 20 opportunities to Travion Henderson's 2. I do want to go on a rant about the Travion Henderson usage, but I don't even know if anyone wants to hear it. Not even saying that, like, he should be in some sort of 50-50 split. But the fact that you spent a top 40 pick on this dude and he can't even get in during garbage time, like, I'm sorry, that is just coaching malpractice. But for Ramondre here, really nice week 7, 18 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown. It is just a really tough matchup here against the Browns. They're allowing the fewest points per game to the running back position. And I don't really view Ramondre as someone who's going to like really overcome that really tough matchup. Now, looking at tier 5, this is really like the last tier where you're like, all right, I feel pretty decent starting these guys. The first player is going to be Kamani Vidal. Really nice usage in week 7, 13 of the 16 running back opportunities. The issue is that only turned into 35 yards from scrimmage. The rushing attack probably just isn't going to be great behind this banged up offensive line, but it's still a good offense. And like I said, the usage was pretty nice. Then I've got Jordan Mason going up against the Chargers. I will say, like, look out for the return of Aaron Jones. He could come back this week. If he does return, I would certainly drop Jordan Mason. But in the last 4 games, he's put up 23.6, 10.2, 12.6, and 11.7 PPR points. He does have a little bit of like that J.K. Dobbins in him, where you are kind of banking on him getting into the end zone. But at running back 20, with 6 different teams on bye, I think that's fine. Then I've got Rico Dowdle going up against the Bills. And pretty much the Panthers just went like drive for drive with these running backs. Chuba Hubbard got the start. He took the first drive, and then they were just switching off. Like certain running backs would filter in if the drive went longer, to give the other guy a breather. But like it did seem like they were trying to make this a 50-50 split. Fortunately for Rico Dowdle, he just continued to produce. He had 17 carries for 79 yards, also caught a pass for 17 yards. This is a good matchup against the Bills. They have not been good at stopping the run. They're allowing the 6th most points per game to the running back position. Bryce Young did injure his ankle late in that game in week 7, so we'll see what his status is. But as of right now, view Rico Dowdle as a back-end RB2. Then I have Alvin Kamara going up against the Buccaneers. Kamara has been super disappointing this season, only 10.8 PPR points per game. He's only gotten to the end zone a single time, but I do think we could see his usage bump up a little bit. Unfortunately, Kendre Miller tore his ACL. Still didn't really lead to better production for Alvin Kamara, at least in like the week 7 game, because Kendre went down pretty early on in that one. But I do think he gets a slight bump moving forward. But it's also possible they just bring in Devin Neal and he kind of slides right into that Kendre Miller role. A couple more guys in this tier. We've got Isaiah Pacheco going up against the Commanders. In his last 2 games, he's had 15 and 17 total opportunities. The Chiefs have the 2nd highest implied point total. That type of workload on an offense that's going to score points, tough to have him outside of the running back 2 territory. And then the last guy in this tier, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, actually had some pretty solid usage in week 7. He took 14 of the 22 running back opportunities. The problem is that only turned into 32 scrimmage yards. Jaden Daniels' health is kind of up in the air at this point with his new hamstring injury. The Commanders right now, it seems like Vegas doesn't think Jaden Daniels is going to play because their implied point total is at 19.5. And then they're 9.5 point dogs. So just game script wise, like that is not good for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. With his usage, it's primarily on the ground. You want, a leading game script where they're just going to be able to feed him the ball a ton of times. You also would like that efficiency bump you'd get with like the threat of Jaden Daniels' legs. So could potentially move up or down depending on the status of Jaden Daniels. Then moving into tier 6. So these are like our high-end running back 3s to mid-tier running back 3s. You certainly don't feel great playing these guys, but especially in this week, there's certainly options. So I'm going to start off with Tyler Algier. That might seem crazy compared to some of these other guys that are potentially like the running back 1s on their offenses or just in really solid splits. But you look at the matchup here against the Dolphins, the Falcons are 7.5 point favorites. The Dolphins are allowing the third most points per game to the running back position. And the Falcons kind of have this funny gimmick where it's like, if they're leading in a game into the fourth quarter, they really like Tyler Algier to be like their late game hammer. He's had 3 games this year with at least 10 PPR points. And so I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen in this one. I would not be shocked if Algier ended with like 12, 13, 14, 15 carries, potentially getting into the end zone late. So like high-end running back 3, it certainly feels gross. It does feel like the floor is pretty unsteady, but it's not a pretty week. I think you could do worse than Tyler Algier in your lineup. Then I've got Chuba Hubbard. You might be wondering, like, if these guys were in a 50-50 split, why is Chuba Hubbard a tier below Rico Dowdle? I just feel like this is 3 games now of Rico Dowdle being super productive. They had this 50-50 split, but Chuba had 14 carries, turned that into 31 rushing yards. I think if the usage is going to sway one way or the other, I think we're going to see more Rico in week 8, and like maybe that's just him taking the first drive instead of Chuba taking the first drive. But if there is any shakeup, I think it's going to benefit Rico, and I think it is going to hurt Chuba Hubbard. Then I've got Woody Marks going up against the 49ers. Man, the Texans offense is just pretty brutal to watch. I guess like a positive takeaway is that they did heavily rely on Woody Marks. He had a 63% snap share, 43% route participation, 63% of the opportunities. It did seem like once, they were in that trailing game script, they did kind of turn to him. The issue is just like this offensive line is terrible. The run game is non-existent. Like Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, neither of them could get anything going. And then they're also running out this weird gimmick where they've got like Dare and Gumbawale taking the third downs. Like, just give those to Woody Marks. Like, what are we doing here? He is the guy who gets into the end zone, but tough to really trust this Texans offense at all. I mean, now Nico Collins is going down, so pretty much like stay away from all those dudes. I guess maybe with the exception of Dalton Schultz coming off a pretty strong week 7. The next guy, another rookie, we've got Brashard Smith going up against the Commanders. In week 7, he saw really strong usage, 14 carries, 5 targets. Now, the carries a little gimmicky because a lot of them came late in the game during garbage time, but still thought I'd mention it. In the last 4 games, he's caught at least 3 passes. They're just really intent on like scheming him up at least a few different times in a game. With this week, a lot of teams on bye, like you might just have to take that on an offense that's going to put up a lot of points. And then I've got the Titans running backs, Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard. You might be thinking, like, why are these guys ranked below a Brashard Smith, the Woody Marks, even a Tyler Algier? This offense is just terrible. Like, they're implied 15 points this week, and Spears and Pollard are pretty much in a 50-50 split. And so in terms of fantasy production, like, they're pretty much just splitting nothing, where, like, if each guy's taken 5-6 carries, 4 targets a game, it's unlikely that's going to turn into anything playable. Like we did see Pollard have a decent receiving day. It was Spears who had the better performance in week 6, but tough to get excited about either of these dudes unless one's actually able to separate from the other. And then the 7th and final tier. This is like just trying to desperately get to a number above 30. These are guys that I certainly don't want in my lineup, but I get it. You could have your top 3-4 running backs on bye this week. We're going to start off with Nick Chubb. 5 carries for 16 yards, 3 targets, 1 reception for -5 yards in their last game, Monday Night Football. I will say the Texans are somehow betting favorites against the 49ers, so maybe this is a game script that like slightly favors Nick Chubb more than Woody Marks, but you got to be desperate to play him. Then I've got Kyle Monangai, actually coming off a pretty strong week 7, 13 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions for 13 yards. He took 1 of the 3 goal line snaps. He took 5 of the 9 third downs. Like I talked about with Swift, this Ravens defense has not been good at stopping the run. Do I want to be playing the Bears running back 2 this week? No, but running back 32, that's where we're at. Then I've got Kareem Hunt, kind of a weird player because his usage has taken a hit, but it's really just because he's been banged up over the last couple of weeks. We had seen him and Isaiah Pacheco be pretty much in like a 50-50 split early on. With Kareem Hunt's injuries, that kind of shifted, but if he is healthy heading into this one, maybe he sees better usage. And then the last guy here, RJ Harvey, it's a good matchup on paper. His usage still has not been great. Did get into the end zone in week 7, but like 6 opportunities, that's not really cutting it. Outside of my top 34, if you guys are debating between players, you can drop them in the comments. I'll give you my best answer, but I can't, promise it's going to be the most analytical thing. Like if it's like this running back 2 or this running back 2, I guess you're just siding with the one that I think has the upside to get into the end zone. But that is going to wrap it up for my running back rankings. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.